Welcome to the Sober and Happy podcast, where we talk all things recovery related, how to navigate the challenges that we'll face along the way on our journey towards our best lives, and how we could go from living a life of simply just being sober to a life where we are both sober and happy. I saw a post in a Facebook recovery group last week where a gentleman was defending the fact that he was a functional alcoholic. Although he currently was not drinking, I knew that this outlook on his relationship with alcohol was likely going to be an issue in his recovery. I see this a lot. People minimize the effects alcohol has on their life. They defend it like it was an old friend. You see it with terms like functional alcoholic, binge drinker, or even when people still focus on the perceived benefits they got from drinking. How many people do you hear say in various ways that alcohol is the only way they could have fun or socialize? This week, I want to get to the importance of getting real with ourselves and the steps we could take to do an honest evaluation of our true relationship with drinking. So buckle up. This is going to be a great episode. I think most people with addiction problems go through various phases and degrees of denial about the true impact alcohol has on their lives. I know from personal experience that getting past denial could be a difficult and often uncomfortable process, but it's an important step towards personal growth and healing. If we are not truly honest about the big picture of our alcoholism, then at those challenging moments in life, whether it is dealing with raw emotions that no longer are numbed out with alcoholism, feelings of boredom or loneliness, or the certain difficult moments that come with life, we are putting ourselves at the risk of relapse. When those moments hit, the denial breeds justification. We start only looking at the perceived benefits of our drinking, and then all of a sudden, drinking starts looking like a good solution once again. Then we drink, get reminded that it only makes things worse, and hopefully, if we're lucky, we get sober again. However, if we never get honest with ourselves, we'll continue this cycle over and over again. As I look back on my drinking, I could see various stages of denial and justification that I had around my drinking. In college, I often referred to myself as a binge drinker and told myself that partying was part of the college experience. As my drinking became a daily habit while I was still in college, that is when I started referring to myself as a functional alcoholic, since I was able to drink and still make it to class and eventually graduate. The functional alcoholic stage carried into my career as I was able to drink every night and still make it to work most of the time. Even if I missed work, I would tell myself that I never got fired for drinking, so it really wasn't affecting my work. Eventually, though, I did lose a job because I missed too much work. At that point, I was no longer denying that I was an alcoholic. However, I went through various stages of justifying my need for alcohol. It was common to hear me say things like, "It's only hurting me. It's the only way I'm able to socialize and have fun." And then my favorite go-to, "If you've been through what I've been through, you would drink too." Getting sober did not resolve my denial problem. Yes, I was well beyond the denial part of whether or not I was an alcoholic. However, I still justified why I drank alcoholically and still often focused on the perceived benefits of drinking, and I felt like I was missing out on life by being sober. In those moments of denial, it made being sober feel like a punishment. So how do we move beyond that stage and embrace the blessing that sobriety really is? The first step is to recognize our denial. This could be a very difficult and painful process, but it is necessary to live a life where we are sober and happy. To do this, I took an objective approach to analyze my drinking all the way back to when I just started. Initially, I didn't think I needed to go back that far since I was beyond the denial of being an alcoholic, but I found it beneficial to go all the way back since it really helped me identify my pattern of that behavior and how to better recognize it in my life today, because I still struggle with denial in other areas of my life. I attacked this task almost like making a pros and cons list. I know that we are working through denial of the consequences of our drinking. However, by not addressing the parts we liked about it, we're not being completely honest in the process. I've heard many people when I was still going to AA say, "My worst day of sobriety is better than my best day of drinking." That itself is just another form of denial. If drinking was not really effective at giving us what we wanted at some point, we would have not been motivated to keep doing it so often and for so long. As I analyzed this, I saw many things. In college, I thought I was just enjoying the college experience as a binge drinker. I used my good grades and the fact that I got a degree as proof that there wasn't a problem. And there was a lot of fun times in college. I went to a tech school, so partying was not a priority for most of the people there, but we managed to find the crowd that enjoyed it, and our apartment became the party spot, and we embraced that. I made a lot of friends, I did a lot of fun things, I was finally comfortable enough to talk to girls, and I was finally the cool kid I always wanted to be, and we threw legendary parties. We actually threw a beach party one time in our apartment, complete with 2 truckloads of sand and a kiddie pool in the corner of the living room. But now the consequences. Although I did get good grades at the beginning of college, I know I could have gotten better grades then, and eventually my grades started to suffer. In the end, I was barely getting by. I started drinking and driving. I woke up on strange couches in apartments I didn't even remember going to the night before and had no clue where I was. Sometimes I woke up next to strange people I didn't even remember meeting the night before. I did a lot of things I was ashamed of that hurt some of my friendships, some of them permanently. I even picked up a criminal record along the way, and this was during the fun stage of my drinking. Now on to the functional alcoholic stage of my drinking. My career started out pretty successful. I got a degree in business, but also graduated at the tail end of the dot-com boom, so I taught myself how to do software development and cashed in on the end of that. I made decent money, was able to go out often, and was more successful than most of my friends, and I had a career I felt proud of. This was the definition of a functional alcoholic, I thought. Unfortunately, I carried over many of the consequences of my fun stage of drinking and started adding on some more. Although during this stage, I never was technically fired from a job for my drinking. When the economy and my career field took a downturn, I was always on the list of people within my department to get laid off. I know this was because I was not as reliable as my coworkers. I wasn't missing a lot of work yet, but just showing up to work did not make me a good employee if I was still suffering from the night before. As for my alcoholic stage, the consequences were not as hard to find. However, I still needed to take a good look at the statements I would make to justify being an alcoholic. I told myself it was only hurting me. It didn't take much reflection to start to see the effects it was having on other people in my life. They worried about me. I became completely emotionally available. I avoided friends that would bring up my drinking, and many of my behaviors had direct impacts on others' lives. I told myself it was the only way I could socialize and have fun. There are occasional moments of fun in my drinking at that point, but honestly, I mostly socialized with people who drank as I did. Our whole lives revolved around drinking. My life had become a pattern of figuring out how to support my habit, indulging in my habit, feeling horrible the next day, and then repeating the cycle. It was far from a fun existence. And now my go-to excuse. If you went through what I went through, you would drink too. There was a lot of truth to this statement. I drank to avoid feelings. Some were from events out of my control that I never knew how to process in a healthy manner. But drinking never solved these problems. They just delayed feeling them, and the longer I delayed them, the heavier they were to carry. And all the other things I was drinking to avoid, those were just the consequences of my actions from drinking. I was trying to use the problem as a solution to the original problem. It's like burning yourself by touching a hot pan while cooking, and then trying to treat the burn using the burner that made the pan hot in the first place. It was only when I took away the problem and faced the underlying feelings that I got the true relief that I thought alcohol was providing me. With my examples, I suggest going through the same process as I did to take an honest look at your relationship with alcohol. Maybe your consequences are not as serious or as obvious as some of mine. I wish I would have done this much earlier in my alcoholism. If you're still at the stage of drinking where you consider yourself functional, maybe you could take an honest look at it now before the consequences become so drastic that you can no longer deny it. If you're struggling with finding the negative effects, maybe start by asking yourself some of the following questions. Is your drinking affecting your ability to live the life you want? Is it delaying your dreams? Are you doing things that you're ashamed of? Are you able to be fully present in the relationships that are important to you? Are you living life fully or simply settling with your current existence? While you're going through this process, I know it can be difficult and painful, so I want to give you some other tips that could help. First, seek support. Talking to a trusted friend, family member, or therapist could provide you with the support and guidance you need to move through this process. I definitely would not pick the friend that you know will co-sign on your justifications and assist in your denial. I know we all have friends that are good at that. Reach out to the ones that could help you see things more clearly and provide you with the support you need to get through the difficult emotion. Educate yourself. Learning more about the issue you're in denial about can help you see the reality of the situation more clearly. Learning more about alcoholism helped me through this process. It made me clearly see many of the reasons why I continued to drink to the point that I did. It also helped me see that no amount of denial or justification was going to make me any less alcoholic, no matter how much I tried to minimize it. Take responsibility. Denial at its core is an attempt to avoid taking responsibility for our actions or situation. We must acknowledge our role in the situation and take steps to make changes. This isn't about simply identifying the denial. If we stop at that part of the process, we'll often get stuck in stages of blaming ourselves or self-pity. Start experiencing life sober. If you go through this process, you'll identify many of the things you thought alcohol was providing you. Rather than getting stuck in that stage of thinking you're missing out on those things, start experiencing them sober. If you think you can't have fun without drinking, start having fun sober. Try new things. Learn to experience the things you love without drinking. It is going to take trial and error. The important thing is that you are trying. Practice self-care. Getting through this stage could be a stressful and emotional process. If you remember my final stage of drinking, I simply was drinking to survive. I had to learn to survive sober, which took a lot of support and self-care. For me, that looks like things like regular therapy, exercise, meditation, long road trips with the radio blasting and singing along, and spending time in nature. Find things that work for you. Just like finding fun in sobriety takes trial and error, finding what brings you peace also will be an experimental process. Remember, getting past denial is a process that takes time and effort. Be patient and gentle with yourself. I promise you it'll be worth it, and it was one of the most rewarding things I have done for myself since getting sober. I would love to hear how this process works for you, so please share it with me. My contact information can be found on my website, soberandhappy.com. Also, if you're enjoying my podcast and finding it impactful, please share it so we can impact others. New episodes come out each Friday, so I look forward to connecting with you next week. And as always, thank you so much for listening, and keep living sober and happy.